June 11th, 323 BC, Babylon. The most powerful man on earth is dying. Alexander the Great, 32 years old, undefeated in battle, ruler of an empire stretching from Greece to India, lies paralyzed in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. 12 days ago, he was drinking wine at a banquet. Now he can barely move his head. Fever, battle wounds, too much alcohol. That's what they want you to believe. But here's what they don't tell you. His body didn't decompose for 6 days in the Babylonian heat. Ancient physicians recorded symptoms that match almost perfectly with one specific poison. And the guy who brought him that fatal cup of wine, his name keeps appearing in every suspicious death that followed. This isn't ancient history, this is a cold case, and someone got away with the perfect crime. Before we solve a murder, you need to understand who died. Alexander wasn't just a king. At 20 years old, he inherited Macedonia from his assassinated father. By 32, he'd conquered the known world: Greece, Persia, Egypt, parts of India. He named 70 cities after himself and one after his horse. The guy was confident. But here's where it gets interesting. Alexander believed he was literally the son of Zeus. Not metaphorically, literally. He demanded his generals bow to him Persian style. He wore Persian clothes. He married Persian wives. His own Macedonian soldiers. They hated it. By 323 BC, he's back in Babylon planning his next conquest. His army's exhausted. His generals are furious. And Alexander is becoming increasingly paranoid as he executes anyone he suspects of disloyalty. The stage is set. Multiple people want him dead, and someone's about to make their move. Let's reconstruct what happened. May 29, 323 BC. Alexander attends a banquet hosted by his officer Medius of Larissa. Wine flows freely. This is Alexander. The guy was famous for his drinking parties. Then, at some point during the night, according to ancient historian Diodorus, Alexander drinks from a large bowl of wine and is stricken with pain. He's carried to his bed, and over the next 11 days, his condition deteriorates. Let me read you the symptoms recorded in the royal diaries. Day 1 to 3, abdominal pain, fever begins. Day 4 to 7, fever intensifies, but he can still give orders. Day 8 to 10, progressive weakness, difficulty walking. Day 11, paralysis, unable to speak. Day 12, death. Now here's the creepy part. For 6 days after he dies, his body shows no signs of decomposition. In Babylonian summer heat, ancient Greeks thought this proved he was a god. Modern toxicologists, they see something else entirely. Let's talk about that wine. In 2014, a team of toxicologists from New Zealand and the UK spent a decade analyzing every poison available in Alexander's time. They ruled out the obvious suspects. Arsenic and strychnine kill within hours, not days. Hemlock causes convulsions. Alexander was conscious and lucid. But there was one plant that matched every single symptom. Veratrum album, white hellebore. This flowering herb was well known to ancient Greeks. They used it medicinally, but they also knew it could be fermented into wine. When consumed, it attacks the central nervous system. It causes sustained low blood pressure, a dangerously slow heart rate, progressive muscle weakness, and here's the key: death can take 12 days. The symptoms include abdominal pain, fever, paralysis, and inability to speak. And because it effectively shuts down the body before actual death, decomposition is delayed. It's a perfect match. But matching the poison is only half the puzzle. Now we need to find out who put it in that wine glass. Four primary suspects. Let's start with the most obvious. Antipater was Alexander's regent, left in charge of Macedonia while Alexander was off conquering the world. For 11 years. By 323 BC, this 78-year-old general had basically run an empire by himself. And Alexander, he was about to fire him. Right before his death, Alexander had sent his general Craterus back to Macedonia with explicit orders: replace Antipater and bring him to Babylon. Ancient sources confirm Antipater was terrified. Alexander had already executed multiple officials on suspicion alone, including Parmenio, one of his father's most trusted generals. Antipater knew what happened to people Alexander didn't trust anymore. So did he have a motive? Absolutely, he was facing execution. Now, his son Iolaus was Alexander's personal cupbearer, the guy who literally handed Alexander his wine. Ancient rumors claimed Antipater sent the poison to Babylon in a mule's hoof because it was so toxic, and Iolaus delivered it to the king at that banquet. Here's what makes it even more suspicious. After Alexander died, Olympias, Alexander's mother, was convinced Antipater did it. So convinced that when Iolaus died in 320 BC, she had his body exhumed and desecrated. Then she went to war against Cassander, Antipater's other son. But wait, there's a twist. Cassander arrived in Babylon just weeks before Alexander fell ill. Officially, he was there as his father's representative, but multiple ancient sources suggest he carried the poison with him. When he later seized power in Macedonia, he systematically murdered everyone with a claim to Alexander's throne. This included Alexander's mother Olympias, his wife Roxana, and his 14-year-old son Alexander IV. Why would you eliminate an entire bloodline unless you were covering up something? Alexander didn't just conquer Persia, he burned it to the ground. The Achaemenid Empire had ruled for 200 years. Alexander ended it in a decade. King Darius III was dead. The Persian aristocracy was either executed or forced to bow to their conqueror. But some survived, and some of those survivors ended up at Alexander's court in Babylon. They had access to the king. They had every reason to want him dead, and White Hellebore grew wild in their former territories. They knew exactly how to use it. But here's the problem with this theory. If Persians wanted Alexander dead, why wait until he's in Babylon planning his next conquest? Why not do it years earlier? And why would they use a poison that takes 12 days, giving plenty of time for suspicion to fall on them? Unless it wasn't Persians acting alone, unless they were working with someone inside Alexander's inner circle, someone with access to that wine. Wait, his own mother. Olympias was intense. Ancient historians describe her as sleeping with snakes, practicing mystery cults, and having zero problem with murder. She allegedly poisoned Alexander's half-brother Orhidius to eliminate him as a rival. When Philip II married another woman, she orchestrated his assassination. This woman did not play around. Motive? She was furious about Alexander's Persian integration policy. He was marrying Persian women, promoting Persian officers, abandoning Macedonian traditions. To Olympias, her son was betraying everything Macedonia stood for. But here's the thing, killing Alexander wouldn't benefit her. She had no power except through him. After his death, she fought desperately to protect his son Alexander IV. Would she really kill her own ticket to power? Most historians say no. The Olympias theory probably comes from ancient propaganda designed to smear the entire Antipatrid family during the wars that followed. Here's the dark horse candidate. Ptolemy was one of Alexander's 7 bodyguards. Some historians think he might have been Alexander's illegitimate half-brother. After Alexander died, Ptolemy seized Egypt and founded a dynasty that lasted 300 years. In 2004, historian Paul Doherty claimed Ptolemy poisoned Alexander with arsenic. His evidence: Ptolemy was present at the banquet. He had everything to gain from Alexander's death, and that's exactly what he got: Egypt, power, and a dynasty that would eventually produce Cleopatra herself. But the arsenic theory has been debunked. Arsenic kills too quickly, and Ptolemy's own historical account, which later historians used as a source, never mentions poison. Would he write about Alexander's death if he was the murderer? Unless he was hiding the truth in plain sight. So what do modern scientists say? In 2014, toxicologist Leo Shep from New Zealand's National Poisons Centre published a peer-reviewed study in Clinical Toxicology. His team analysed every poison available in Alexander's time against the recorded symptoms. And their conclusion was that if Alexander was poisoned, Veratrum album is the only substance that fits. But here's where it gets complicated. Not everyone agrees he was poisoned at all. Some scientists think he died of typhoid fever. It matches the sustained fever and the delayed decomposition. Typhoid can cause a comatose state where the body appears dead but isn't. Others suggest malaria, West Nile virus, or even Guillain-Barré syndrome. In 2018, Dr. Catherine Hall from the University of Otago proposed something wild. Alexander might not have been dead when they said he was. She suggests he had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which causes progressive paralysis. He could have been alive but completely paralyzed when they started preparing his body for burial. But there's one piece of forensic evidence that could solve everything: Alexander's body. Except no one knows where it is. Alexander's remains were supposedly taken to Alexandria, Egypt. Ancient sources describe an elaborate tomb. People visited it for centuries, including Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, but sometime around the 4th century AD, it vanished. Was it destroyed, hidden, or moved? If we found it, modern DNA analysis could detect poison residue. We could confirm or rule out the hellebore theory. We could finally know. Until then, we're left with incomplete evidence and a 2,300-year-old cold case.